The Public Religion Research Institute recently surveyed millennials to find out what their attitudes are when it comes to certain social norms and social behaviors. And some of the results are actually kind of surprising and conflicting. So let me tell you what I found most interesting in their survey. What they found was across all racial and ethnic lines, the survey consistently found that millennials found casual sex to be more morally wrong than homosexuality.
Well, that's super interesting. So now, first of all, they don't find homosexuality to be that immoral anyway. So that's not a high barrier to cross. But actually, they do find casual sex to be fairly immoral.
They do. So let me give you the numbers. 37% believe that sex between two adults who have no intention of establishing a relationship is morally acceptable. So a minority, only 37%. Whereas 42% believe that sex between two adults of the same gender is morally acceptable. That's fascinating.
Okay, so let's understand what's going on there. So even though it's 37% say it's acceptable to have casual sex, 37% also say it's wrong, and there's a big number in between that aren't sure. So it's not like there's nearly 70% of people or 60% of people saying, no, it's definitely wrong. It's a little bit more mixed than that. But it's still, I'm surprised at how low those numbers are for how acceptable they find casual sex. They're still a little bothered by it, which I wouldn't have expected. These are among millennials, right?
It is among millennials. And I think that it does reinforce the notion that all of the fear-mongering that you see in the media over casual hookups in college is blown out of proportion, right? I don't think people are hooking up as much as the media thinks they are. But also, no, but I hope...
I'm bitter.
You're the worst. But yeah, there's still a lot of slut shaming that goes on, and it needs to end. So if you have two adults...
There needs to be more hookups.
But there's... Okay, first of all, who am I to say there should be more or there should be less? All I know is we are creatures of sex, and if we choose to have a casual encounter, as long as we're adults about it and we're safe, why shouldn't we be able to do so without the judgment?
No, I'll go further. I'm pro-sex. So I'm pro-breathing, I'm pro-food, I'm pro-drinking. I mean water by that, but alcohol, nothing wrong with that either, within bounds of reason. And yes, sex, these are all things that we're programmed to do. To try to deny our programming is insanity. Now, you can argue about who did the programming, but even if you think it was God who did the programming, then why are you going counter to God's intent? God intended for you to have a lot of sex. That's why he put that drive in you, right? So I don't think that there's any issue with it, especially at college for people hooking up. But apparently millennials are more judgmental than I am.
Yeah, they're a little more judgmental when it comes to... But look, at least we've made a lot of progress when it comes to the gay community. Now let me give you some more numbers. More than 70% of millennials across all subgroups said that it is morally acceptable to use contraception. That's good news. And almost 80% of them said that multiple forms of contraception should be made easily available on college campuses. Now I should note that in this study or survey, they spoke to a lot of religious students, people who identified as Protestants, for instance. And so it's good to know that the vast majority of them are like, yeah, we want to use rubbers, we want to use hormonal oral contraceptives, we want to protect ourselves from unwanted pregnancy. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even the ones that were against using contraception were like, we'll just make it available in the colleges just in case.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe because they think it should be available to others, if you want to be generous to them, or available to them just in case they change their mind.
Just in case.
Yeah,
right. Millennials also overwhelmingly believe that it is morally acceptable to cohabitate before marriage or have a child out of wedlock. 70% of them believe it is either morally acceptable or morally acceptable depending on the situation.
Is that interesting? 70% say you can even have a kid out of wedlock, but you must love the person.
Yeah, so
because all those people that said, no, if you don't love them and you have a casual hookup, then I'm against you. But if you do like them and you're living together and you're having a kid and when you're not married, I don't care. Have at it, Hoss.
Yeah, that's fine for them. I have a hypothesis behind that. It's because a lot of millennials are either unemployed or underemployed, or they have a ton of student loan debt if they are employed at a good place, and they can't afford to get married. Getting married is expensive. And so cohabitating is a cheap alternative to it, and it doesn't change whether or not you love someone. A piece of paper doesn't change anything. So I think they're more understanding because of the circumstances they're in.
Well, that's how society gets less and less judgmental. You begin to realize, oh, that could apply to me. And when you realize, oh my God, just like you said, I don't have the money to do X, Y, and Z, And so I got to live with my boyfriend or my girlfriend. Then all of a sudden, you judge those people a lot less because it's you.
Exactly.
Right. And then I wanted to mention that nearly 80% of Black, Protestant, White Catholic, Hispanic Catholic, religiously unaffiliated, and white mainline Protestants believe that members of the LGBT community deserve laws protecting them against discrimination. Okay? So, and even 51% of white evangelical Protestants thought that. So another interesting finding there, because 80% is a huge number,
yes.
saying we're totally in favor of gay rights, but only 42% of them found it acceptable to have sex between two adults of the same gender.
So that's what I mean by the conflicting data.
Right. So again, a lot of them were unsure, so it's kind of a weird bracket, but some people basically saying like, oh no, I want them to have all the same rights. I just don't want them having sex. I'm not sure you've thought that one through.
Exactly.
Right? But I think actually, in all fairness to the millennials here, what they're saying is overall, we are still going to judge random hookups. If you're just having sex for the sake of sex, we're still not entirely in favor of that. But we want you to have all the rights in the world, whether you're straight, you're gay, you're cohabitating, or otherwise, right? The only holdout are white evangelical Protestants, and even among them, for millennials, they've now tipped over a tiny bit saying, okay, give gay people rights. So the future is ours.
I know, it's overall good news. I like this survey a lot.